Here's Archie's Travels, Chapter 47, entitled A Crime. Unfortunately, it was not a happy homecoming. When Dolly walked down the path, she saw her parents waiting outside and looking stressed out. What's the matter? Said Dolly, fearing the worst. We've been burgled, her mum said through teary eyes. As soon as Dolly stepped inside, she could see the carnage. Chairs were turned upside down, and a large mirror was broken. Dolly stepped over the glass and she picked up a family photograph. It was difficult for her not to cry. James became angry. Who could have done this? He said very loudly. It didn't take long for a suspect to come forward into his mind. Could Jack have done this? He thought incredulously, and he shared his suspicions with Dolly. I don't know, Dolly said. We need proof. We can't just accuse him of a crime, she said, wide-eyed. I bet it's him, James said, but he could sense that his anger was upsetting Dolly, and so he calmed down a bit. The last thing he wanted to do was to upset Dolly and her family. He helped straighten the cockeyed furniture, and Dolly used a dustpan and brush to sweep up the scattered glass from the broken ornaments and china, and when it was all done, they sat around the old oak table and drank a refreshing cup of tea. Dolly's mum dabbled her eyes with a handkerchief, and Archie sat silently by the fire. He was just as saddened by it as everyone else, and as he sniffed the air, he could tell immediately who the culprit was. He had no way of telling anyone, his nose was never wrong, but it was so frustrating that he decided to sleep on it. It had been a long day, even for a dog. Back at the caravan, Jack was looking at all of the goodies that he had collected. His silver carriage clock, an old wooden pipe, a pearl necklace, and his most treasured possession, a framed photograph of Dolly and her parents looking happy on some sunny vacation at the other side of the world. Jack turned his goods over and over in his hands. He was fascinated by them. They gave him power, and it was something which he had always relished, like a king of his castle. He had a part of them now, he thought. No one makes a fool of me, he said to his shadow on the wall, and he smiled a bitter, lopsided smile. He was truly a horrible man. It took Dolly a while to realize what things were missing. Where's my pipe? Said Stan, as he struck a match and allowed it to expire like his mood. Now he had nothing to puff on, and he wasn't happy at all, which wasn't surprising. Where's my lovely carriage clock? Dolly's mum wailed. There was a clean space where it had sat on the cabinet for the last 20 years. Dolly looked up and she noticed that something else was missing. Where's our holiday photos from Hawaii? She cried indignantly, and she dropped a chocolate biscuit into her tea in shock and surprise. James leaned over and said, We'll catch him, he said. I know it, Sammy whispered, and before they knew it, the evening was dragging on and it was time for James to go home. No one slept well that night, not even poor Archie. They all felt like they were being targeted and it was time to strike back. The next day, Dolly and Archie and James met up in their usual cafe and they discussed plans. It's time to revisit the caravan, said James emphatically, and they all knew that Jack would be at work till 5, so they had plenty of time to investigate. Once again they trampled through the woods, but this time the winter leaves were buried by the snow. The autumn leaves were now buried by the snow, and the bare frozen trees were free of the flap and the caw of the birds. It was eerily silent except for the pad pad of their footsteps sounding in the snow, like sounding like the midnight creeping of a thief.